Hi there, Chevrolet owners. Today in your 2018 Chevrolet Silverado 1500, we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install SumoSprings for the rear axle. You can get these in 3 different weight capacities, that being either 1,000, 1,500, or 2,800 pounds of carrying support. Before we start our installation, we want to get a baseline of how our truck responds with the factory suspension so we can see the improvement that the SumoSprings are going to make. So the first thing we do, we're going to take our vehicle here and it's currently unloaded. We want to get what our ride height is unloaded. So when we check from the ground here, we're looking at about 39 inches. Here at the back, we'll then check our front ride height as well. And when we go to the front, we're at about 38 inches here in the front. So we're going to go ahead and drop about 1,000 pounds of water weight in the back, and then we're going to see how that affects our ride height. So now that we've got our weight in here, we've dropped down about 3.5 inches from what our factory ride height was, bringing us down a little bit below 36, a little above 35.5. So we're going to come up here to the front now, recheck here, and here at the front, we've raised it up by nearly 1/2 inch. We're close to 38.5 inches there. So we're going to go ahead and hit our test course to see how it handles on the test course. Then we'll get them installed. We'll recheck our ride heights to see how the SumoSprings have improved it. So now that we're loaded up, we're going to go hit our test course here and see how it feels. And boy, it sure seemed like this truck, the suspension did not take to weight very well. I'm a little surprised for a full-size truck at how much it squatted in comparison with a lot of other trucks that we've loaded down with the same weight. For example, the 2500 model barely moved, while this really slammed our truck. So we've hit our test course here. We're starting out on the uneven bump section first, and this is going to simulate like hitting a pothole. And I will say that while I can tell the truck is slammed in the back and we can feel that we're pulling a lot of weight, the suspension is actually fairly smooth, but boy, is it really bouncing the truck, and our nose is just straight up in the air. It's actually making it, you can tell there's a lot of visibility that has been removed because I see so much of the hood here. And I guarantee at night we're gonna have our headlights at the sky. We've gone through our uneven bumps and now we're on the even bump section of the course, and this is gonna simulate like hitting a pothole. And every time we go over that bump, especially when the back hits there, boy, we got a lot of oscillations up and down. Part of that's because we're using water for our weight, but the other part is just all that extreme suspension. It's probably us hitting the jounce bumpers on the way down, and the jounce bumpers kind of bouncing us up and down a little bit. Because I did hop underneath real quick after we loaded it up just to see what the suspension looked like, and there is a small gap. Our jounce bumper isn't touching when we're just normally sitting here, but I guarantee when we hit any bumps, with the small gap we had, it was hitting, and that really stiffens up your suspension and starts to cause bouncing. So now we're going to head into the slalom section of our course, and this is where we're going to simulate an evasive maneuver. And I'm not gonna lie, I don't feel very comfortable driving this truck with all the weight that we've got in here. A lot of other trucks I felt a lot more comfortable with. This one, we're not gonna be taking it nearly as fast as I would, because boy, I can really feel the weight throwing itself around in this truck. And honestly, we're only doing about 10 miles an hour here, and I'm too afraid to go any higher because I can really feel the weight just throwing around in the back, and that water really wants to slosh. I don't want to damage this guy's truck here. So we're gonna get it back to the shop. We're gonna get our SumoSprings on, see how it handles the weight afterwards. And I do expect we're gonna have a lot more confidence coming into the slalom section here. We'll see how it hits the bump section. There's a chance that it may be fairly similar there, because with our SumoSprings, we're gonna have contact in most cases, almost all the time. So we're gonna get that dynamic support from that SumoSpring versus our current situation. We've got suspension support under some circumstances, and we have jounce bumper support under other circumstances. So it's really jarring and uneven. It makes it more difficult to handle because your suspension stiffness is kind of changing as that bumper contacts and doesn't contact. So let's get into the shop here and make this right. So now we've got our SumoSprings installed. We've loaded it back up once again, and looking like we've only dropped down now about 1.5 inches from our stock ride height, so that's a pretty big improvement. We've come up over 50% from how much it had dropped before. So let's head and check out where our front is. And here in the front, we're maybe a little bit less than 1/4 of an inch above our factory ride height. So that should keep our headlights closer down towards the road, help us see at night a little bit better, so we're not sticking them straight up at the sky like we were with our factory suspension alone. So let's get in here and hit the test course and see how it feels. So we're back again on our test course. We're going to hit the uneven bump section first to simulate a pothole. And you definitely can feel a difference. It definitely feels like it's a bit stiffer. When we hit that pothole, you can kind of feel the way it rocks the vehicle. We don't have nearly as much oscillations, but it seems like the impact hits you just a little bit sooner. I wouldn't necessarily say that it's super stiff. It's just that you definitely feel it, but we don't get any of those kind of afterward oscillations like we had before. Now we're in the even straight across. This is going to simulate like a speed bump. And when we hit this one here, when our front hits, we've got a little bit of bounce up and down. And we do actually get a little bit of a bounce in the back as well, but I'd say it's reduced from where we were at before. So now we're going to head into the slalom section, and this is where I expect to see the biggest improvement, because when we're performing an evasive maneuver here, we're turning to the left or to the right, a lot of that weight's going to want to transfer to one side or the other, and that causes a lot of sway. These SumoSprings really do a great job of minimizing the amount of sway that you're going to get. So let's get into it here. And oh yeah, quite a bit of an improved difference here. We're doing right at about 20, maybe about 20, 22 we can get up to, and it feels pretty good. We can make a nice turn. I can see the water in the back there starting to slosh around a little bit, so we're going to slow it back down. But that's a huge improvement over before when we had no SumoSprings. I was only doing about 10 miles an hour, and boy, it was really sloshing. I could see the water in the back, and I felt like it was about to slide over and potentially hit the side of our bed there, so we wanted to slow down. This one we were able to take it twice the speed, and it felt even better than the factory suspension at half that speed did. So huge improvements as far as the control that you're going to have over your vehicle when you're all loaded up. And this is what our SumoSprings look like when they're installed. You can see that they replace your factory jounce bumper, and you're going to get a much more robust SumoSpring here to replace it. It goes in between the frame and your axle in the exact same location where that jounce bumper was. And here you can see the factory jounce bumper. You can see it's considerably smaller. It's quite a bit shorter. We've got a lot more distance here, so our suspension has a lot of travel before this will ever contact. And this really is just designed here for preventing the suspension from completely bottoming out. It's really not designed to provide much support. Our SumoSpring here is going to contact much sooner and provide support throughout its travel, helping to support the weight that we've got here in the back. You'll also notice the diameter is quite a bit bigger here on our SumoSpring than our factory one. So we get plenty of support here. The SumoSpring, you can see we do have a small gap between the bottom, so when we're cruising around unloaded, it should for the most part feel exactly like just your factory suspension, but when we load it up, it's going to push down on the back of our truck here, and it's going to allow our SumoSpring to contact the axle, giving us that dynamic load as we hit various bumps and things like that. The spring is made of a microcellular urethane, so it's going to be protected against UV rays as well as road grimes and oils, so they'll last a long time here on our vehicle. And there's a set installed on both sides of the vehicle. So we're going to get our support here on both sides, and it's not just going to help support the weight of our vehicle, we're also going to get some anti-sway properties out of this. Because as we go to turn and the weight wants to shift to the left or to the right, our SumoSpring here is going to absorb that body roll movement to help keep our vehicle upright, to help increase our handling, especially when we're hauling a heavy load. So if you're looking at something that you're wanting to level out your ride with, airbags is another option. I personally like SumoSprings a lot because they just seem to be more dynamic and less noticeable when cruising around with them. Airbags, when you air them up to support that load you've got in the back, oftentimes get really stiff, and then it just feels so solid here in the back. These here don't tend to be nearly as solid as airbags. You don't get quite as much control, but usually I find that you get pretty much everything you need out of a set of these, to where the jump to airbags is really only necessary for those that are just massively loading down their truck, people like that. For most individuals, these are going to work out great and give you a good ride quality as well. So we've gone ahead and pulled our truck into the shop, but we've got our SumoSprings here. I just want to take a quick look at them to show you that they do come in 3 different sizes as far as their weight capacities. We've got the lowest weight rating to the highest here, with this being 1,000 pounds, 1,500 pounds, and 2,800 pounds as far as how much that it can support. All 3 of these are going to install the exact same way. You can see they're all very similar size. It's just the construction of the material here that determines its carrying capacity. So we're going to go ahead and get these installed. I just wanted to show you this layout because When you're looking at these, you might go, hey, maybe 1,000 isn't quite enough. What are my other options? You can see that you've got plenty of options here. And then this procedure for installing them is going to be the same. So let's go ahead and get under the truck now. We're going to show you how to get these installed. So now we've got our truck into the shop. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to chalk the front wheels. This is important because we're going to need to lift up on the back end a little bit. So we can have enough space to put our new components in place. And you're likely going to be doing this at home on the ground, and this lift here is pretty much like having it on the ground. It's fully loaded still. Our suspension is just like it would be on the ground at home. So if you're doing this on the ground at home, you're going to want to do the exact same thing. And we've placed a pole jack here under the back. Now if you're doing this at home on your garage, just on the ground, you can use a floor jack here at the back underneath your hitch. Since we're on a lift here, that's why we're using the pole jack. And this is going to raise up on the frame of our vehicle here, moving it further away from the axle, giving us more space to be able to work to get our components installed. And that should be plenty of space there. We're just, again, looking to try to just increase that gap, make things easier. So now we've got everything prepped. We're under the vehicle here. This is the factory jounce bumper that we need to remove. Our new one here is going to be taking its place. So in order to remove your jounce bumper, the first thing you're going to need to do is get a socket that's a 10 millimeter and an extension, because we need the right length to be able to go up in there to get our bolt, but still have some sticking out the bottom here to be able to attach our tool to. So a little 3-inch extension here. A short well works. If you got a deep well, you might need a shorter extension. That just goes up through the center there. We'll take our ratchet here and remove our bolt. Now we've got our bolt out of the way. Simply grab the jounce bumper, just kind of give it a twist or a pull, and it'll pop right out of there. Now at this point, we're ready to start putting our new jounce bumper in place. We're going to take the plate that comes on our jounce bumper, and we're going to install this up into here. You're going to get some bolts in your kit as well as some washers. The washers here we're going to use to help take up some of the space. The the nut, you can go ahead and get rid of. That's for if you have an older vehicle. This is designed to work on more than just this model year Silverado. So it may not be threaded in there. That's when you would use the nut. Ours is threaded though, and our bolt will thread right into it. These washers are here for you to stack up to take up the space here in the middle of your cup. We're going to try taking 2 washers off and then just see how it feels. So we remove 2 of the washers. We're then going to take the remaining washers that are on there, pull those off, slide our bolt through so that way it can be flush on the bottom, and then our washers are going to go back on top, minus the 2 that we had just removed. So now we're going to set it up here. Line up your bolt. I like to just put a thread on it to hold it, and then just push up on your cup and see if it rocks back and forth. We want to be up against the bottom of the cup, and it feels like we need to probably take out 1 more washer because we got a lot of rocking going on there. We're not sitting very even, so we're just going to take 1 more washer off, put it back up there, put a thread on it just to hold it, and then see that our cup sits. And this feels very nice. Sits up there all the way up against our cup. We're taking up the gap that we need to with those washers, so now we can just go ahead and install bolt that we had just put in there. We're going to use a 6 millimeter Allen key to tighten it down, and you want to hold this while tightening it because we want the stud here to be towards the back, just like that. Now that we've got our bracket on, we can install our SumoSpring. You do get some blue Loctite in your kit, and you'll want to fully cover your stud here with some of that blue Loctite to secure this. For demonstration purposes today, we're not going to be using the Loctite that comes in the kit. We're just going to test fitting these and doing some comparisons here. And then we can just simply take our SumoSpring here, lift it up, and thread it right onto our bracket. And now that we've got that installed, we'll perform the exact same procedures over on the other side to get that one installed. And that completes our installation of SumoSprings for the rear axle on our 2018 Chevrolet Silverado 1500.